When Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's DLC released in 2023, it felt like nobody was happy about it. After all, if Pokemon couldn't even get their base game to run correctly, why would anyone buy the DLC? Now, of course, we all know that these games would always sell, but for me, I didn't touch the base game nor the DLC until the Switch 2 version came around. Recently, I played Scarlet and Violet for the first time on the Switch 2, and the sheer difference from the Switch 1 version is amazing. Maybe not the second best-selling game in the series levels of good, but still really good. And now it's time for me to take on the continuation of the game with the Hidden Treasure of Area Zero, a two-part expansion pack with new maps, characters, and Pokemon, very similar to how it was for Sword and Shield's DLC. So today we're gonna find out if the Scarlet and Violet DLC is actually good, but also if it's even worth your money. We start off at the Academy, and in case you aren't familiar with my team, this is it. But I'm gonna be swapping out Tinkaton for Fluttermane for a while. To start the DLC, I talked to this woman in the lobby named Briar, who is gathering students to leave for a school trip. She's a teacher at the Blueberry Academy in the Unova region, which is the sister school of ours in Paldea. This year, it's their turn to run the joint school trip, and we'll be heading to Kitakami, a land outside of Paldea. They never specify whether it's a part of a different region or not though, so now that we're waiting around for the others to show up, Briar asks us about the Scarlet book. Turns out that the author of the book was an ancestor of hers, and she has the original version that doesn't have parts blacked out. On these pages, she shows us Terapagos, a Pokemon that allegedly exists at the depths of Area Zero. Of course, she doesn't have permission to go to Area Zero, so she puts that idea off to the side for now. As for us, it's time to start the first part of the DLC, the Teal Mask. We head to Kitakami, and it's obvious we have come a long way. Most likely, this is near one of the Japanese-style regions in Gens 1 through 4. One of the kids with us is feeling unwell though, and most of us are tired from the travel, so Briar asks us to go tell the caretaker in Masui Town that we've arrived. I mean, don't you think I'm a little tired too? Well, in town, we meet a girl named Carmine, or is it Carmine? I'm gonna go with Carmine, who immediately tells us to not enter town because we're a foreigner. Wow, xenophobia in the first 5 minutes of the DLC. Nice. Not sure why this girl is so intense, but she wants to battle us and have some real good fun. Using our Fluttermane, we tear through her Poochyena, Poltergeist, and Vulpix with ease. Anyway, Carmine continues to be horrible and says that we could be her slave, basically. Luckily, the caretaker finally comes out to help us, and he goes to treat the student at the bus stop. Technically speaking, those two kids, Carmine and Kieran, are on this field trip with us, but since they're originally from this town, they won't be staying in the community center with us. The next morning, we're told all about our field trip, and they want the students to split into pairs and go check out 3 signposts across Kitakami and take a selfie in front of it. We decide to team up with Carmine because we hate ourselves, but she says her brother Kieran was actually talking about us all night and wants to battle us too. Alright, well, he sends out Sentret, and our Fluttermane continues to go on a rampage, taking it down along with his Yanma. Well, now we decide to pair up with Kieran since he clearly likes us so much. From this point, we get freedom and the ability to use Koraidon. I figure we better not waste time though and go to the first signboard. Kieran is really awkward, but we go ahead and read it and learn about an ogre that once lived in the mountain behind the village and came down in a terrible rage. But luckily, 3 Pokemon, Okidoki, Munkidori, and Pheasantipity, also known as the Loyal 3, came to save the day, but sacrificed their lives for it. Kieran seems to be quite fond of the ogre since it took 3 Pokemon to defeat it. At the next signpost, we learn of the different masks the ogre would wear and that it would grant different powers. The Loyal 3 stole the 3 masks from the ogre, and they're in this town to this day. Not the Pokemon, the masks. Kieran shares more about his affection for the ogre and says that he wants to get stronger, so maybe he could be the ogre's friend. This kid really likes that thing for some reason. He then suggests we go see the ogre's home, and it's supposed to be this place called the Dreaded Den. It's up this huge mountain, so we follow him and reach it. Despite it being its home, nobody's ever seen here. Kieran then gets the idea for us to battle again, and he's a little stronger than last time, this time with a Furret, Poliwhirl, and Yanma. If you notice the progression of these battles being very quick, I think it's because the DLC is meant to be done while you're playing the story, and well, I just ignored that completely. Unfortunately, he is still nowhere near our level. We decide to take a look inside the den now, but little do we know, something seems to be watching us. After looking around, Kieran tells us that today is the first day of the Festival of Masks at Kitakami Hall, so we decide to put off the last signboard to tomorrow and prepare for the festival tonight. At his house, we meet his grandparents, and Kieran introduces us as awkwardly as possible to them. They help us change into our outfit and give us the worst haircut I have ever seen. Carmine is also here and preparing for the festival. We're meant to wear these masks, but they only have 2, so we're gonna be left without one. Instead, Carmine challenges us to a battle. She starts off with a Morpeko, who manages to survive our Fluttermane with a Focus Sash and actually one-shots us with Aura Wheel. I think this is the first time a trainer in all all of Scarlet and Violet has used a held item. But we have Meowscarada come out to finish it off, and I decide to revive Fluttermane to handle the upcoming Swadloon and Sinistcha. Finally, we have King Gambit come in and take down her last Pokemon, Mightyena. Well, now it's time to go to the festival, and the siblings get their masks. Kieran tries to offer his ogre mask, but Carmine really didn't want him to because it's his favorite. Kieran does tell us that despite how horrible Carmine appears though, she's actually pretty nice and was tearing up the whole shed looking for a third mask for us. Aww. When we arrive at the festival, we're greeted by a ton of nice food stalls and take a picture together. The purpose of this festival is to honor the Loyal Three, but Kieran makes fun of Carmine and now she doesn't know the true lore about the ogre. Anyway, we explore the festival a bit and find a mini game where we have to ride Koraidon around and gather a bunch of berries and put them into baskets. I'm not really sure if this mini game is the most interesting, but you do get decent rewards to boost your Pokemon's EVs, and also the EXP charm to get more EXP from battles. Carmine doesn't seem very happy that we beat her though. Actually, she's furious about it, but then we see some sort of creature in the distance. We go up to it and say hi to this kid in a mask. Dude, that's obviously not a child. Well, Carmine comes up to us to be rude to Kieran behind his back, but that causes the Pokemon to run away. We chase it down, but its mask falls off and it gets scared off again. Finally, we realize that this wasn't a kid and it was actually the ogre. We try to tell Kieran about it, but Carmine butts in before we could talk. She didn't want him to feel bad that we saw the ogre and he didn't, which I guess makes sense, but now we have to keep a secret from him. I guess it's time to go home and head to bed though. The next day, Carmine asks to speak to us and tells us we should speak to her grandpa about what happened and to show him the Teal Mask we got. Kieran wakes up and asks us to go see the signboard, but Carmine yells at him to go away and he reluctantly listens. Apparently, Carmine doesn't believe that being rude to someone counts as anything less than hitting them. Well, her grandpa tells us the story of Ogre, or Ogerpon, and how it's actually the other way around. A long time ago, a man and Ogerpon came to Kitakami from a foreign land. The people in the village were scared of them because they looked different and they didn't let them in the village. One man in the village, a mask maker, did feel bad for them though, so he made them masks so they could hide their face as they interacted with the locals. People started to love them actually, but then 3 Pokemon known as the Loyal Three came and stole the Pokemon's masks, 3 out of the 4 of them. The man who was defending the mask at the time was killed sadly while Ogerpon wasn't even there, and when it came back and discovered what happened, it ran down to the village and defeated the 3, and it ran back to the caves in sadness. Hearing this story, Carmine became furious, but the grandpa said that it's important to keep it a secret in fear that the villagers would question them and attack them. I mean, it makes sense. They've been told this story for years and they would not want to have their perspective challenged. For some reason, the grandpa decides to keep this a secret from Kieran though, which literally makes no sense at all. And even worse, the whole time Kieran was listening, so this is going to be a whole problem, isn't it? Yeah, Kieran goes ahead and tries to make us feel bad by asking what we were talking about, and we just have to lie. Alright, time to head for the last signboard at the Paradise Barrens. Kieran asks to battle us here, and he starts off with his usual Yanma. He certainly is stronger than last time, but our Fluttermane deals with it all the same. Next is Poliwrath, so we have Meowscarada use Flower Trick, one-shotting it. Then he had Furret come out, so we had Goldango Nasty Plot and Make It Rain to defeat it. His last Pokemon is Dipplin, who survives a Shadow Ball miraculously, but is swiftly defeated the next turn. We read the signpost, and it's basically just more anti-Ogerpon propaganda. Kieran does seem to feel pretty bad about the fact that people hate the ogre, even though it's probably not as bad as they make it seem. And really, to make this whole situation worse, we just have to pretend like we don't actually know the truth, even though we do, and he knows it. Oh well. The next morning, we're asked by Carmine and her grandfather to get a material to fix the Teal Mask Ogerpon dropped. It's located at the crystal pool at the top of this mountain. When we get there, it's seemingly covered in Terra crystals. She even says that people have seen those who have passed away at this lake. Well, suddenly, a Milotic jumps out the water, and we have a little double battle to defeat it. When we do, it drops the crystal cluster that we need to fix the mask. Briar then turns up and explains a little bit more about the Terra crystals here before we go. Back at Carmine's house, we learn that Kieran stole the mask and ran off to where the signpost was at the very start. We find him at the grave of the Loyal Three, and he says that we treated him the same way as the villagers treated Ogerpon back in the day. And then he starts to freak out and ask for a battle. His first Pokemon is now an evolved Dion Mega, but we have Goldango Nasty Plot and try to Shadow Ball. But he flinches twice in a row, so I decided to heal him back up. I usually wouldn't go for a healing item this early, but I mean really, flinching twice in a row, come on. We eventually do get a Shadow Ball off and take down Yon Mega. Next, he has a Gligar that goes down to a Shadow Ball, and then after a Poliwrath, so we have Meowscarada Flower Trick, but this time it survives and deals a big Brick Break to us. We hang on though and finish it with another Flower Trick. Next, he had a Cramorant, but it's really weak to grass, so it didn't last long. And finally, he had a Dipplin come out to take us down, but then Fluttermane finished it off, and oh boy, this kid is a sore loser. I mean, I definitely feel bad because we were forced to lie to him, but he really needs to not take things so hard and start punching things like this. He gives us the mask and leaves. But suddenly the graves start shaking and the loyal three are somehow revived. They ran away and visited the festival grounds and stole all of the masks and food the villagers had. But the whole time the villagers thought they were doing a good thing. Even worse, the three are heading to Ogrepon's cave to get revenge. Without any masks though, it can't possibly defend itself, so it's our job to go and save it. And indeed, at the den, Ogrepon is being attacked, and then they send Monkey Dory after us. Defeating it was easy, but then they just run away. Kieran is also here to apologize for being an idiot, and we also apologize for lying to him. Ogrepon thanks us for saving her, although she is still scared of everyone except for us. Even though we gave Ogrepon's mask back, it still doesn't have the other three, so we form a team to go defeat the loyal three for good and get the masks back. Ogrepon will also follow us around for now, except in the village because it's too scared. Also back in town, we meet a photographer named Perrin who somehow has a Hisuian Growlithe. She gives us a huge catching quest, but it's honestly way too lengthy to handle right now, so I'll do that on my own time. But we're in town to get some information on where the loyal three are, and when we do, we mark the locations on our map. One by one, we take down Monkey Dory, Okidoki, and Pheasantipity, who have all magically grown in size. Each of them drops a respective mask of Ogrepon's, and with the help of Carmine, we get them all. After we get the last mask, Kieran asks us to quickly come into the village. Ogrepon is still terrified, but Kieran insists that everything will be okay. To everyone's surprise, Kieran has somehow convinced the whole village the truth of the story, and everyone's on Ogrepon's side now. I mean, I'm not really sure how Kieran of all people was able to convince everyone, but whatever. On the bright side, Ogrepon is now welcomed with open arms. Our job is now complete though, so we take Ogrepon back to her home, although I don't even think she wants to leave us. In fact, she wants to join our party. Oh, but of course Kieran isn't going to be happy about this, and he has to take Ogrepon if he beats us in a battle. Alright, it's time to see Kieran at his full power. His first Pokemon is Shiftry, and despite our efforts of using Nasty Plot to make it rain, it had a Focus Sash the whole time, so we lose our Goldengo early on. So we have Meowscarada come in and finish it off, and then he sends out Yanmega. I felt like Fluttermane would be better against it, and I was right. Next, he has a Probopass, who Tatsugiri was able to handle with 2 Surfs. Then he had his Dipplin, but I thought Tatsugiri would still be good, so we used Dragon Pulse one-shotting it. Then was Poliwrath, so Meowscarada came out, and once again, it tanked a Flower Trick and used Close Combat to one-hit KO us. Finally, Fluttermane comes in and beats it, but it wasn't strong enough to take down his last Pokemon, Gliscor, but at this point, we have too many strong Pokemon to handle him, and our Farigiraf finishes the fight. Sorry, Kieran, you never stood a chance. Now, Ogrepon wants to have us try and catch it. In a test of strength, we fight Ogrepon using all of its masks, and its various forms have different types, so we had to use our entire team to beat it. But we managed to get through all of its phases and capture Ogrepon. I think I'll probably use her for the rest of this DLC and replace Tatsugiri until we need him again. Kieran is still upset though and runs away crying. We kinda follow him back, but back in town, Carmine asks us to battle her one last time with our Ogrepon. She starts off with Mightyena and we terrestrialize Ogrepon using its Wellspring mask. Defeating it was no challenge, but then she had her Morpeko with a Focus Sash and we got critical hit by Aura Wheel, taking down our Ogrepon already. Meowscarada comes in to finish it off, but we still get paralyzed beforehand. Because of this reduced speed, she has a Levani come out that one-shots us. So we have Fluttermane come to use Mystical Fire and do the same to her. The following Sinistcha also faces the same fate. Her final Pokemon is Ninetales, and with 2 Power Gems, we're able to defeat Carmine. After the fight, she starts to talk to us like she's about to confess her feelings or something, but we get a call from Briar telling us to come back for an announcement from the caretaker. Here we're informed that the Blueberry Academy students will have to leave a bit early, but then Carmine tells the crowd that she's sorry for being xenophobic and she's learned a lot from us. With this, we give her one final goodbye, hopefully seeing her again at the Blueberry Academy. Meanwhile, Kieran's in his room just absolutely freaking out about becoming stronger. Well, that's the end of the Teal Mask DLC. Quite the interesting field trip for sure. Back in Paldea, a strange man in a white suit named Serrano says he recognizes us, and then Clavel comes in and we learn this man is the director of Blueberry Academy, and we've been accepted there as a transfer student. He requested us specifically to come there, and it turns out Carmine recommended us for the academy. Naturally, we'd go, and we discover that the school is pretty much entirely underwater. A girl named Lacey comes to meet us, and she says that the reason this place is underwater is because it's connected to an undersea plant that develops natural resources. She introduces herself, and she says that she's a second year here, and she's also a member of the Elite Four at this school. Oh, also, she's the daughter of one of the gym leaders in Unova. She decides to battle us, and at this school, they specialize in double battles. Luckily, my team is quite strong for those. She uses a Plusle and Minun with a backup Excadrill, and this battle was harder than I expected. We just have way more Pokemon than her though, so so it wasn't that bad. Excadrill was honestly the biggest threat, but once Ogerpon took it down, we won pretty fast. After this, we're taken inside of the school to the terrarium. This is a huge park which has created 4 artificial biomes suitable for Pokemon to live in. They even set up projectors to make it look like there's a sky. This is all powered by the terrarium core, which has special material from Paldea that emits terrestrial energy. This whole thing was set up by Briar, actually. Regardless, we're invited to partake in our first class here in the coastal biome. The terrarium is actually quite giant and has a ton of brand new Pokemon. I'm sure we'll have a lot of discovering to do as we progress, but for now, let's go take on a class. We meet with Lacey here, and our first assignment is to catch an Alolan form of a Pokemon, which are quite plentiful here actually. Afterwards, Lacey tells us about something really important called Blueberry Quests, aka BBQs. Doing these barbecues will get us some exclusive currency to buy things at Blueberry. We then get a phone call from Carmine, and she asks to meet up finally. We find her in this futuristic plaza area talking to some girl, and we catch up, and it seems like she's been exploring the world with Briar doing research since the last time we met, so she wants to battle us to see how much she's grown. She starts off with a Toucannon and Mightyena, while we use Ogerpon and Fluttermane. Gotta say, if you play VGC, my Pokemon seem much more adept at double battles than hers. Our Fluttermane's Dazzling Gleam hits both of her Pokemon and one-shots the Mightyena, while Ogerpon finishes off the Toucannon with an Ivy Cudgel. Her next and last 2 Pokemon are Sinistcha and Scrafty, the former of which terastallizes. Unfortunately for her, the combo of our Ogerpon and Fluttermane is just too strong, and despite one last effort from her also strong Sinistcha, it was too late and we win the fight. After battling, we hear in the distance a familiar voice. It's Kieran. He looks completely different though and has gotten a whole new attitude thanks to getting beat a bunch of times by us. He has this new obsession with being strong, and he's been terrorizing fellow students over it. Then we meet another student named Drayton, who was the former strongest student at Blueberry and is also the son of the mayor of Opelucid City, Drayton. He offers to show us his club room, so we follow him. This is the League Club, and here students battle each other to climb the ranks in the BB League. Strong enough trainers can take on the BB Elite 4, who are the 4 strongest trainers at the school. He says he's hungry, so we can go on a cafeteria date with him later. Okay. I'd much rather take Carmine back to my dorm room, but well, she asked to visit. Honestly, she just wanted to tell us that Kieran has gone through a massive negative change really, and is now the champion of the BB League and leader of the League Club. But let's just say his life has not become better for it. Anyway, let's check out that cafeteria. Now, considering we're in Unova, let's see what kind of food they have here to represent the real life equivalent of New York. What the hell kind of pizza is this? Alright, well, we're here to talk to Drayton, and he wants us to join the BB League. All of a sudden, all of the 4 Elite 4 members and Kieran show up, and we have a big discussion of whether or not I should be allowed to even compete in the league since I'm an exchange student. Drayton and Crispin agree that we should be allowed, but Amaris and Lacey hate foreigners, so yeah. Kieran breaks the tie and makes an indirect challenge at us, saying he does not lose. Sure, man, sure. We go ahead and register at the front desk, and Kieran confirms that he indeed wants to battle us when we defeat the Elite 4. God, this kid is so creepy now, though. Okay, well, this is the point of the game where we get complete freedom of what we want to do. This terrarium has a lot for us to grind beyond the story, but for the sake of the video, we're gonna stick to fighting the Elite 4 members. I've heard a lot of rumors about these guys and how they're the strongest Elite 4 without question, so let's put that to the test today. First, I decided to take on Crispin, who uses fire types, and for each of these Elite 4s, we have to complete a test before battling. In this one, we have to make Crispin a really spicy sandwich. This was harder than I expected because at the end, you have to assemble a sandwich, and if you mess up, you have to restart from all the way at the beginning, and going through a bunch of loading screens, it was just really annoying. Anyway, the difficulty was only just starting because Crispin himself was impossible to battle. I had so many failed attempts, I even brought back Tatsugiri in order to get some sort of advantage over him. Then finally, I had a battle where I stood a chance. He starts off with Talonflame and Rotom Watch, and I knew these battles would be serious when I saw these two come out since they're both quite well adapted for doubles. But we have Ogerpon and Tatsugiri on our side, so we terastallize and use Ivy Cudgel on Rotom, but thanks to the burn it gave us, we don't deal as much damage as I thought. Luckily, Tatsugiri's Surf takes Rotom and Talonflame down together, while still leaving our Ogerpon alive and well. His next 2 Pokemon are Magmortar and Exeggutor, both significantly downgraded from his first 2 Pokemon. We use Ivy Cudgel once again on Magmortar, but it had a Pasho Berry to tank the hit and finish off our Ogerpon with Thunderbolt for some reason. Tatsugiri was able to beat Magmortar with a Surf, leaving the Exeggutor alive and charging up a Solar Beam. We have Fluttermane come out, and then he sends in Camerupt. I was kinda scared of the Solar Beam, so I had Farigiraf come in for Tatsugiri while we Shadow Ball the Exeggutor. It does manage to live and Solar Beam our Fluttermane, but it tanks it due to having boosted special defense from its ability. With another Shadow Ball, Exeggutor goes down. Camerupt then uses Heat Wave, taking down our Fluttermane, and so we sit in Tatsugiri again. His next Pokemon is Blaziken, and he terastallizes it to use Focus Blast on our Farigiraf, taking it out. But Tatsugiri's Surf is strong enough to wipe out its camera up and deal some damage to Blaziken. All we had to do was surf one more time the next turn to defeat Crispin in a tough fight. Little did I know, this fight was only a fraction of the BB League's true strength. Next is Amaris, and her trial has us playing Superman 64 with Koraidon, which was more fun than I thought. It's a shame Koraidon hasn't been able to fly freely like this until now. Alright, she specializes in Steel type Pokemon, and thankfully we do have some coverage for this. We still had some struggles and lost once or twice to her, but finally I devised a plan. We would start with Tatsugiri and Meowscarada and tank the Earthquake from Dugtrio. Considering it has a Focus Sash, I would attack it with a Flower Trick first and then use Surf with Tatsugiri to finish the job. The only issue is that now we let Skarmory set up Stealth Rock. Her next Pokemon is Scizor, and I made the mistake of using Flower Trick on it because it did nothing. Tatsugiri's Surf also wasn't enough to take them both down, leaving our Meowscarada and Tatsugiri helpless. It wasn't over yet though, because we still had Goldango and Farigiraf as strong options. I nasty plotted with Goldango and used Thunderbolt to finish off Skarmory. The Scizor did somehow defeat our Farigiraf with 1 pounce, but that just gave us the chance to send in Fluttermane, who gets boosted special attack from Photosynthesis. Goldango terastallizes, but before I knew it, Scizor used Bullet Punch to one-shot Fluttermane. Luckily, our Goldango was strong enough to one-shot her Empoleon, leaving a weak Scizor and Reuniclus on her side. Using Ogerpon's Ivy Cudgel, we finish off the Scizor, and with Goldango's Shadow Ball, Reuniclus goes down too. Now, momentum was back on our side. She still had one final wall though, a terastallized Metagross. Ogerpon hit with an Ivy Cudgel, and Goldango Shadow Ball did, and the combined effort was enough to defeat her. I may have made that look easy, but I assure you these fights were some of the first major challenges in Scarlet and Violet at all. They were almost like puzzles in a way. Well, Drayden and Kieran come to acknowledge our victory, and then we head for the next battle, Lacey. Her trial was perhaps the easiest since we just had to answer some simple questions before battling. Now I had a particular bone to pick with Lacey since despite being one of the first ones to show us around the school and be our friend, she still voted against us being part of the league. Getting revenge would not be easy though, and this fight took me an enraging amount of attempts. But finally, I decided to bring back Tinkaton since she would be incredibly helpful in countering her fairy type Pokemon as a part steel type herself. She starts off with Granbull and Whimsicott, and thanks to Tinkaton's own tempo, she avoids the Intimidate. We go for a fake out on Whimsicott and attack with Ivy Cudgel with Ogerpon. Miraculously, it survives both of these hits, and it still manages to set up Tailwind, the exact thing which I was trying to prevent. Now we have to waste a turn with Ogerpon using Ivy Cudgel to finish it off. But at least the next turn we beat Granbull with a Gigaton Hammer. Her next two Pokemon were Primarina and Slowbro, another strong pair. Slowbro had Quick Draw, so it manages to move first before Ogerpon could do anything. Regardless, Primarina was fast enough to get a Hyper Voice off and activate its Throat Spray, which boosted special attack. Then we have Farigiraf coming with Fluttermane, replacing Tinkaton for now. Primarina's Hyper Voice tore through our team, but even though they combined their efforts in double attacking Fluttermane, we survived with 1 HP legitimately. Farigiraf was not so lucky, and we only got to Shadow Ball onto Slowbro. Somehow, she tanks on 1 HP and then eats a Citrus Berry, taking both of our Pokemon out. Now, we were really on the back foot. We have Meowscarada coming with Tinkaton, and with Tailwind finally over, now was our chance. We used Fake Out on Primarina and defeat her Slowbro with Meowscarada, and the next turn I terastallized it and used Flower Trick on her Primarina, knocking it out, and all that's left is her Alcremie, who is left one shot from a Gigaton Hammer and an Excadrill. I wouldn't get too cocky yet though. She terastallizes Excadrill and uses High Horsepower on Tinkaton, but Tinkaton dodges it and we get a Flower Trick off on it, leaving it one tap. Tinkaton also finishes off the Alcremie, and now there was no hope for Excadrill as we only needed to hit it with a final Flower Trick to defeat Lacey. This fight was truly one of my favorites once I figured out how to beat her. And now Drayden shows up and he's our last roadblock to Kieran. His base is deep in the tundra biome, and when we get there, Drayden gives us the hardest trial as well. We have to defeat these 3 trainers only using Pokemon caught in the terrarium. Sadly, we didn't have any Pokemon really from here at all, so I had to go out on a catching journey. While I did get quite a few strong Pokemon like Archaludon and Alcremie, our real backup plan was to cheese these fights with a Lapras using Perish Song, a strategy I would normally never use, but since these battles are just random trainers, I made an exception. The real battle was just around the corner though, and we start our fight with Drayden, a Dragon type trainer. His first 2 Pokemon are Flygon and Dragonite, but ours were Tinkaton and Fluttermane. It's almost like we had been preparing to take on Dragon types since the start of the journey. We terastallized Fluttermane and used Dazzling Gleam combined with a Fake Out from Tinkaton on Flygon. With this, the Flygon goes down and leaves Dragonite weakened. He then had a Haxorus who was faster than Fluttermane and one-shot it sadly. This was a massive loss for us, and even worse, Tinkaton's Play Rough wasn't even enough to defeat Haxorus. We had Meowscarada come out to use Play Rough rough on Dragonite, while Tinkaton did the same thing to Haxorus. It ended up using Breaking Swipe though, and it didn't affect Tinkaton and barely did any damage to Meowscarada, while we were able to take it down and leave Dragonite at red HP. He sent out Kingdra, and unfortunately Meowscarada missed a play rough on it, so it got taken down. Tinkaton did land hers though, and tanked a third Thunder Punch from Dragonite. What a beast. That would be the end of her run though, as Dragonite used Extreme Speed the next turn to ensure the knockout. We sent in Farigiraf, and with a Thunderbolt, the Dragonite finally fell. With no fairy types left on our team, I was getting kinda nervous, but I could always rely on Goldengo in times like these. I used Shadow Ball on Kingdra, which was enough to KO, and Farigiraf used Psychic on his Sceptile for a bit of chip damage. His last Pokemon was a Terrestrialized Archaludon, a terrifying Pokemon for sure. We used Shadow Ball on it, but it didn't do as much as I thought, and its defenses were raised thanks to its ability Stamina. It uses a Dragon Cheer boosted Electro Shot to one-tap our Farigiraf, and we have Ogerpon come in as our last Pokemon. And so we have one final turn to seal the game. Ogerpon uses Ivy Cudgel on Sceptile, and Goldengo uses Make It Rain, landing a crit and defeating Drayton for good. But now the real fight is up ahead. Kieran, a battle rumored to be one of the toughest in the entire franchise, both in and out of the game itself. But look at us and look how far we've come. Our team is full of insanely powerful Pokemon, more than capable in double battles. There's no way we can lose. The battle takes place right at the entrance of the school, and Kieran's first two Pokemon are Dragonite and Politoed. I don't think I ever let out an audible gulp in a video game before, but here I did. Dragonite Politoed is a legitimate lead in VGC competitive Pokemon. We start off with Tinkaton and Goldengo and use Fake Out on Dragonite while nasty plotting with Goldengo. Politoed goes for a Weather Ball, and it does leave our Goldengo at half HP. The next turn though, a Make It Rain does do enough to take the Dragonite out and do decent damage to Politoed, while our Tinkaton does even more with Play Rough. His next Pokemon is Incineroar, but thankfully Tinkaton has own tempo once again, so we're completely fine. Goldengo also manages to hang on to 10 HP after a Weather Ball. What I am worried about though is that fire type advantage Incineroar has, so I quickly retreated with Tinkaton and had Ogerpon come in. With another Make It Rain, Politoed is defeated finally, but that would be it from Goldengo as Incin takes it down. I sent in Fluttermane and he sent in Porygon Z. Kinda random, but okay. We Terrestrialize Fluttermane and take a Shadow Ball, but we survive and use Dazzling Gleam to leave both of his Pokemon one shot. And Ogerpon even takes down Incineroar here too. Next up was Grimmsnarl, and it set up Reflect, and Porygon used Hyper Beam to demolish Ogerpon. But a Dazzling Gleam was too much for it to handle, and Grimmsnarl only hung on thanks to a Focus Sash. Naturally, we sent in Tinkaton while he had a Terrestrialized Hydrapple as his last Pokemon. A Fake Out on Grimmsnarl was enough to defeat it, and finally 2 Dazzling Gleams would be enough to get the victory over Kieran, proving no matter how hard he works, he could never defeat us. Kieran obviously takes this hard, and Drayton comes to rub it in. Honestly though, he deserves it. Kieran was a horrible person throughout all of this, and he couldn't even beat us, which was his whole purpose. After talking with the Elite Four about the situation, we get called into the office by Miss Breyer, and along with Drayton, Kieran, and Carmine, she tells us that she wants to go on an expedition to Area Zero in hopes of finding Terapagos. Then Geeta enters the room with Rika. Apparently over a decade ago, the Pokemon League once offered support researching the area until it was restricted entirely. But now there's a good reason to assume the area needs to have more research done in it to prevent dangerous attacks from Pokemon. So we decide to help. Drayton decides to stay here, but Carmine and Kieran come along. Kieran especially wants to because he wants to catch Terapagos. Now this guy is trying to use a legendary Pokemon to get strong enough to beat me. Coward. Geeta also gives us the Indigo Disc. She doesn't really know what it even does, but it's apparently important for Area Zero, so she figures we should have it. And so let's set off back to Paldea. Back in Area Zero, Briar is smiling ear to ear about how cool the place is, and after all, she's worked her whole life to make it here. We jump all the way down to the bottom of Area Zero. In front of the lab, the control panel seems to request we put the Indigo Disc inside it, and when we do, access to the Area Zero depths is granted. We take the elevator all the way down and make it to the depths, and Briar is ecstatic. There are a bunch of books and research from Professor Sada here, and one says that Terapagos is the hidden treasure of Area Zero, and that it has a Terra type that holds the power of all types, aka Stellar type. Up ahead, we discover that there are Terra Crystals blocking the way, but also that there are Pokemon here with some sort of different energy around them. These have the power to terrestrialize with the Stellar type, and when we defeat them, the crystal blocking the way breaks. As we progress further in, we have to do this a couple more times and complete some parkour with Koraidon until we reach the deepest layer. I haven't mentioned it yet, but Kieran has been a little baby this whole time and says they've been relying on us too much at this point. Really? I mean, they've been helping out too, and Carmine even says she only has her Sinistcha left, so I'm not really sure what Kieran is whining about. But up ahead, we find it, the hidden treasure of Area Zero. hero. Kieran starts pulling this crystal as hard as he can so he can have the power to beat me. Even after all this, Kieran still tries to make himself seem like the victim. Eventually, he does pull out the treasure and it transforms into Terapagos. Somehow this is a little underwhelming. Immediately, Terapagos has an interest in us, but Kieran throws a Master Ball and catches it before we got the chance to. Then he decides to battle us with it. I'm not gonna lie, it is pretty strong, but just that thing isn't gonna be enough to defeat us. He isn't even using any of his other Pokemon. I don't know what he's thinking. He seemingly takes it to heart when he loses and gets upset again, but the honest truth is, Terapagos wasn't even at its full power. Kieran terastallizes it and it transforms into an absolute monster that almost blasts him, but our Koraidon comes to the rescue. Kieran tries to call him back to the ball, but it breaks, and now we have to defend everyone from this monster. Carmine sends in Sinistcha to help us, but she's quickly defeated and we're left all alone to handle it. Kieran also is just standing there not helping. Thanks. Even worse, our team isn't even fully healed up after that fight with him. Literally, this kid has only made life harder for everyone involved with him. I wouldn't say this fight with Terapagos is hard, but it's just a matter of endurance. Finally though, after taking a lot of pain, Kieran decides to help us out. This extra help is enough to get over the sheer wall of Terapagos in this state, and we finally catch it ourselves. Afterwards, Briar apologizes since she got us into this situation in the first place, but Kieran also says he's gonna let go of his fantasy of getting stronger than me. Good, because that's simply a fact of life, and you'll never be stronger than me. Nobody can. Regardless, we head back to Blueberry, and Kieran decides to give us the apology that he rightfully owes us. He says that he wants to make things right, and he wants to start over and be friends again. Naturally, we wanted this from the start, and we make amends. And with that, the DLC of Scarlet and Violet is complete, although there is a lot of other stuff to do if you want to. After playing the Scarlet and Violet DLC, I can tell you right now this is a lot better than I thought. I want to make it clear one thing though, the DLC is entirely what you make of it, particularly in the Indigo Disc portion. The only reason I say this is because once the story's over, there's a lot of grindy stuff to do, but we'll talk about that later. Let's start at the Teal Mask portion though. This part of the DLC took place entirely within this small area of Kitakami, which I think is perfectly fine. I wasn't expecting the scale of Paldea or anything, and it makes sense narratively. That being said, the lacking of stuff to do in the world itself has to be picked up by the story, and I think they do that pretty well. Ogerpon's tale progressing over time was interesting, albeit a little predictable. I think this shares a great message of how we need to not treat people differently just because they look different, and it certainly is a message that's good to have in a kid's game. Kieran's story is something I'm also generally a fan of, and while I have some criticism, it is unusually complex for a video game like Pokemon. Kieran is originally shown to be a kind but quiet kid, but a switch flips in him once he realizes we'd been forced to lie about meeting the ogre. This all culminates in a big moment where we battle him and we think it'll resolve, but it just doesn't, and it ends up festering into something huge in the next part. This is still good, but I just kind of felt like this was a little bit unreasonably problematic. Our character gets turned into this villainous figure, which makes sense a little when you make contrast with the original Ogerpon story, but I don't see why we're made out to be such a horrible person. Maybe he could be upset with Carmine or his grandfather, but why us? We literally met yesterday and were thrust in the middle of some random folklore coming to life. I can forgive this though because it's only one part of the story. In the Indigo Disc, we see a true example of how jealousy and desire for strength can make someone into a horrible person. Kieran's actions at the Blueberry Academy are insanely cruel and come out of nowhere, and I could personally attest to this. It is realistic. Sometimes when you feel so inferior and desire to be stronger so bad, you can forget who you really are as a person, and it can make you crazy. It's something I've struggled with my whole life, and seeing Kieran's actions really make me reflect on my own. It may be just a silly Pokemon game, but there is an importance to understanding your own emotions, because if you don't, you can end up hurting others around you. Despite his looming presence, Kieran is barely a part of the Indigo Disc until the end when you battle him and go into Area 0. Because of this, his persistence to be stronger than us after we already won the battle with him felt weird. I'm not sure why he thought just using Terapagos against us with a full team of 6 would be a good idea, not to mention he had literally weakened us before fighting the super boss of the game. The apology at the end of the story felt a little half-assed, and I left the game feeling negatively about Kieran instead of appreciating his character arc. Much like many other pieces of media, Kieran's character arc ending is a little bit fumbled, sadly. Also, the Terapagos stuff really felt rushed, like completely out of nowhere. It was weird to have Ogerpon's entire DLC portion dedicated to it, but Terapagos got like a battle or two. As for Carmine though, I loved every part of her character. She doesn't have much of a character arc per se, but more like you just get to know each other better, and I think it's because of how much she's involved in the story that I grew fond of her and her interactions with all the other characters. The others throughout were pretty bare bones though, with the only big side characters being Drayton and Briar really. I know it's hard to flesh out a bunch of side characters in such a short amount of dialogue, but some like Crispin just felt a little undercooked. Now let's talk about the gameplay. Speaking as honestly as possible, the Teal Mask was a pretty simple DLC. You just go from one location to another, completing a battle or two, and then you progress the story. The Indigo Disc was similar, but the effectiveness in my enjoyment was probably better. The Teal Mask battles were all incredibly easy, like they really didn't make me think at all. But then for the Indigo Disc, every fight is a double battle, and all the Elite Four plus Kieran had a ridiculously challenging setup that made me strategize every single time. Also, it was nice to go around the terrarium and discover all the new Pokemon they added, which I feel were much better than what the Teal Mask added. Actually, you can unlock even more, but you have to grind a lot of the BBQs, which are probably my biggest negative about the whole thing. These objectives are boring and grindy while barely offering you any reward. Doing things like unlocking a new Pokemon for a biome takes needlessly long, which does disappoint me. On the bright side, the music in the terrarium is all inspired by Gen 5, which I can't deny had me going crazy the first time I heard it. Looking at the DLC as a whole, I would say that the true fun of it is held in the Indigo Disc. If you're a fan of competitive battling, it's basically a must-have. Similarly to how all the competitive players in the Gen 8 era kinda had to have the DLC for Urshifu and Calyrex. Truthfully, I had a great time, and I would say I did get my money's worth, and I will continue to as I play beyond just the main story of the DLC. For most people, I don't think you need to get it, but for hardcore fans, I don't think you'll regret getting it. Oh, also, you can fly forever with Koraidon after you beat it, so if that's any incentive to get it, then yeah. So, did I think that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's DLC was actually good? Sure, I thought it was fun. I don't think it excused any of the poor launch back then, but now with the Switch 2, it was fun. I think there is something to say about this DLC versus Sword and Shield, but that's for another day. For now, we have one final game to play in this gauntlet of a franchise, Pokemon Legends ZA. If you watched this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I would love if you could subscribe and join the channel membership, which you will get free access to all the new videos I release on the channel and a bunch of bonus content. Thank you so much. Bye bye.